Hey there, what I see is people letting their businesses run their lives versus them leading their business to love their life. I see this in corporate jobs, and I see where we step into expectations that other people have of us that do not honor us and allow us to lead our own life. Welcome to this episode, and I'm glad you're here to listen.
From the corners of my mind is where I find my sanity.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Lead Your Life with Debbie Heiser. I am so excited to have Jenae Lyn with us today, hailing from Nebraska. So Jenae and I know each other through this international mastermind, and I think this is your first year, right? Like you just started. When did you start?
Very end of November. I attended a conference in November.
Okay, November of 2021. And so by the time the audience is listening, it'll be almost a year, a couple months shy of a year. And so part of what really intrigued me about you, Jenae, is meeting you through this mastermind and the energy that you bring forth, and just like this vivum for life, right? Like you just have this like desire to lead a lit up life, and the energy of that comes forward in every way that you show up and that I've seen you show up. And so that's part of what intrigued me about speaking with you. And I know that, you show up in the world and you serve the world in some really unique and awesome ways. And so I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself professionally, and I'm going to turn it over to you, and then we're going to have a conversation.
Thank you, Debbie. So my name's Jenae Lyn, and I live in Omaha, Nebraska. During the day, I help people by really allowing them to experience work in the best way possible. I'm an employee engagement and experience professional working for an international HR technology company. And then at night, I allow people to experience and show up in the world in the ways that they feel is best for them as well. And I do that by visibility coaching in two different ways. One is through social media work. So I actually have a background of working at LinkedIn for almost 10 years, and then using LinkedIn as an influencer marketing manager for 2. And so really kind of putting those two things together to help people find their visibility on social media, and also being visible in the personal and professional relationships that they have through coaching.
Fantastic. And Jenae, tell me, because I know like working a day role, and then you kind of joke at night, but like as entrepreneurs, we fit it in, right? And so it's not that we're necessarily always in the hustle. And we were having a conversation right before we taped about getting to that point in our lives where we don't feel the overwhelm anymore. We lead full lives, and we're choosing that. And we're choosing that as relationships happen, like shifting how that looks as an entrepreneur, and when I'm doing the actual tasks of my business. So tell me, like, what prompted you to step into helping people become visible?
I think it's something I've struggled with my whole life. I recently realized about myself that I have wanted to be seen in so many different areas of my life, but really starting with my relationship with my family. Having the support and the pride of my parents is something that has always been really important to me. And now learning as an adult to realize where I can find that level of support and pride in myself is like that transition for me was so impactful. And really the first time that I realized that was I went to the only place in the country that I've been able to find where I felt like I could truly show up and be seen as an individual. And it was in maximum security prisons across the country.
Oh, tell us more.
Yeah. And I stood in front of these amazing men and women who have made grave mistakes and are working through what living with those grave mistakes looks like, and how they can say, like, I will not be defined by the worst thing that I've ever done in my life, and I will choose from this point forward to make better decisions and to do things in a different way. And it was the first time where I felt like I could truly be me as well. And so stepping into entrepreneurship for myself now was actually is actually a testament to some of the things that those men and women have taught me about choosing to let go of the past and choosing to put yourself out there in a way where you may be judged and you're still going to choose to move forward anyway.
Yeah, that's great. And Jenae, when you how did you get involved in that?
Yes. So there's a woman named Catherine Hoke, and she was speaking at an entrepreneurship conference, and that's exactly what she talked about is what if you were known for the worst thing that you've ever done? And in full transparency, I sat in the audience and I heard her say that, and what popped into my head was I had been married and gotten divorced because I had cheated on my ex-husband. And when I did so, everyone knew about it. We had a large business ourselves, and it became something that was very known. And I felt that kind of sting of shame. And then the thought of putting myself back out there again as a business owner was something that had always held me back. And so when I sat, she talked about it and she said, come to prison with us. We have this program. You can come in as a mentor. You can provide advice on resumes for individuals when they choose to get out. You can go in and they actually have a business pitch, Shark Tank style business pitch competition
Oh,
that
wow.
people across the country participate in, and you can participate as a judge. And I said, you know what, I'm going to do that. And I have been volunteering in those types of programs for 7 years now, and it's changed my life as well. And
Yeah.
I've been able to see the impact of those programs.
Jenae, that's fantastic. And so thank you for sharing that. And I think for me, it's so important. And one of the things as I work with clients is we look at how do you get back to your community, and because as you know, too, the law of abundance says, the first order of that is in giving, right? And give. And that's so critical in my opinion, in order for our communities to thrive. And so kind of shifting a little bit, you decided to step in. Well, I know you stepped out of working with LinkedIn, went to work somewhere else, and stepped into then saying, I want to help other business owners be visible.
Yes.
And so what do you find, as you work with people like me, what do you find is the biggest hang up for entrepreneurs?
Yeah. Perfection and
Ooh.
overthinking things. I don't know if that hits at all for you.
Yeah, I
But
coach a lot of that. When did you learn you had to be perfect?
totally, absolutely. And what's so interesting about social media is the people that are loved the most, followed the most on social media, they actually show their imperfections. It's not a perfectly curated social media presence, and that behind the scenes. And I think it's really saying, how do I share more pieces of my story? What is the day-to-day what is my day-to-day life like behind the scenes, and how can I showcase some of that on social media? First off, it makes you not be perfect, and second, then you're not having to spend so much time trying to create something that's going to go viral.
Yeah.
Which none of us are content experts. If we were, we also wouldn't be entrepreneurs, or we'd be entrepreneurs doing content for other people, right? So
Right.
it's lowering that bar of expectation and just putting ourselves out there so people can see us for who we are.
Yeah, that's so good. And Jenae, I know I run into a lot of times working with people because I work both on the internal and let's talk game plans and business plans and tactical. How are you going to make this happen? And for me, I don't think you can have one without the other. And so I run into a lot of people that are afraid to be visible. So even when you talked about helping people be visible, there's a lot to that. There's a lot of depth in that. It's not just breadth. And so tell me what you found to be the biggest struggle that you've had stepping into helping other people be visible. I know when I first started working with my business coach, she asked me what I wanted. And that's what I said. I want to step out from behind the mask. Not that I wasn't being authentic, but I was being what I thought everyone else thought I should be, right? Midwest. It's not a knock to the Midwest. I love the Midwest, but you get married, you graduate college, you get married, you have children, you get a job that you live for the weekends. And that was just a culture that I bought into. And so to step into them being visible, and there's different layers of what that visibility looks like, is hard sometimes for people. So as a coach yourself, helping people be visible, what have you found to be the biggest struggle in helping people to do that?
Oh man. Well, first off, for me, one of the things that's most difficult for me is practicing what I preach.
Yeah. Isn't that true?
So yeah. Like it's like I tell people, I'm like, hey, if video is not your thing, don't try to spend 3 hours a day trying to create a perfect video. Like if you like to write, then write, and let's get your message out there in ways that make sense in writing. For me personally, one of the things that I have hair and makeup done today, but one of the things that I'm practicing right now is how do I show up without all of it sometimes too? Because a
Mm,
barrier for me then is if always I look like this, and granted, I want to look like this always. I'm actually
yeah.
working on that in my personal life too. But what I don't want to do is miss an opportunity to have something to say that I want to share, but because I didn't look good enough for being on social, that I didn't choose to do it. So you can go two ways. I can always look good enough, which is actually what I'm working on. And
Yeah.
in that journey and process, I'm going to be okay with where I'm at too, and being able to be visible through that. So that's one of the things I'm working on.
Yeah, Jenae, that's fantastic. And then, and I think that's such a critical piece because what I'm seeing is that people are craving authenticity, they're craving congruency, right? The walking the talk and making sure that that's the same. It's really exhausting. I Not to get too teachy here, but I talk about transactional analysis, which is the committee in your head. And the adolescent is the one that stands up and tries to create this perfect persona. And it's really exhausting. And I know, I mean, I found that to be true. And then it's interesting because I've also found that I feel like I lead a lit up life. It's not that I don't have moments, right, of doubt, or I don't have moments where things don't go as awesome, but I also live by this acronym that my friend came up with. And I say stuff, she says shit, but shit just goes my way if I choose it.
Mm-hmm.
And how I show up in the world, like yesterday, I was sitting there. I live across a 1.5 mile bridge. There was an accident on the bridge, and we were stopped there for 20 minutes waiting to get across something that normally takes a minute to get across. And the person I was with was like, oh, well, we just moved up 2 car lengths. Hoo hoo. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. That's not the kind of energy to show up in because it could be worse. Like, and I'm not trying to be positive Pollyanna, but when I look at it, this went my way because I could have been up in front of that and been a part of that wreck.
Right.
And so I look at it that the 20 minutes I'm sitting here is well worth that time. Plus I caught up on a whole lot of emails and texts, but but I find that like looking at that authenticity and walking our talk, sometimes I find clients that I work with struggle a little bit with that.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you get someone to move forward in that? Like what's your, if you could give us a hack that you potentially, and I don't like the word hack, let's back that up because it's not a hack, but what's like a process or something that you would say to people in that situation to say, here's a little bit of what you can do to step into that. I heard you say, take the makeup off and show
Yeah.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, so if you're creating, let's talk about social media content.
Yeah.
If you're creating social media content, write stuff down for 15 minutes a day and then don't touch it. Like, go back and just work on it for 15 minutes every day, and then when something's ready to go, knock it out. But don't spend 3 hours working on something. If you can get something as like that'll take you maybe 3 days to do it, if so, but then you're not spending hours just like stuck in the minutia of like working on one word choice that no one cares about. Like they don't, and they
Yeah.
may, and the reality is that they're not likely. A lot of people in your social network aren't even going to see it if you're creating organic content. So like you're going to be posting a lot of the same similar things over and over. So write it 3 separate times, and now you have 3 posts that you can put in your calendar and do it later. For me,
Perfect.
I have certain times of the day where I'm better at creating content. One of them is Saturday morning. Well, I'm not going to post all of my things on Saturday morning, but what I can do is I can write it all and then put it in a content calendar so that way it goes out on a regular basis throughout the week when I'm busy doing other things. But people
Yeah.
don't know that. Another big piece, especially certain platforms, this works better than others, LinkedIn being one of them. Spend a lot of time on LinkedIn commenting on other people's stuff.
Mhm.
The barrier of entry, like as far as how much like emotional tax it takes to create something, is less when you're commenting on someone else's thing. So get really good at doing that before you're creating all of your own content. The algorithm on LinkedIn really helps like it loves comments. And so as you're doing that, you're going to be driving more people to your profile without having to create something net new and perfect.
Oh, I gotcha. Okay. And that's really good advice, because what I'm hearing you say, the first point that you made is that just every day get into the habit of writing for 15 minutes. You don't have to post it, write it in a Word document or whatever works for you. And then, or write it and put it together and stick it in a calendaring. Is there a couple that you would recommend to people?
I have one that I love called Pager,
Pager.
Paiger.co. Yep.
I'm writing that one down.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
It's one of my favorites. But honestly, there's a whole bunch of them that work really well.
Yeah. And I think that's really good advice, because for me, I know I've struggled in the past thinking, oh, if I'm going to post 3 times a week, I've got to come up with like all this organic content. And then I feel the pressure, which then makes my creative brain go
Yeah.
roll out. Right. And that's what I was hearing you say. So I love that idea of, even if you're not going to use it, just writing for 15 minutes a day. To me, that makes so much sense, because then it's even, maybe it's a topic for a podcast or a topic for something else that might go out, an email campaign, whatever might be there. So that's great advice. And then the second one is what I heard you say, particularly in LinkedIn, is to engage
Yes.
and just get out there and start commenting on different people's things. And Jenae, when you think about that, and I don't want to give away all your secrets because I know you have some coursework and that type of thing, but LinkedIn, what's the audience? I've heard different people say, oh, I need to be on LinkedIn because I'm kind of promoting to professionals that might be thinking about leaving a job or might be thinking about starting a business. I've heard other people say, oh, it is all professionals, and so that's not my audience. So I'm going to stick with Facebook because I work with that age group that tends to be in Facebook. Or, hey, I'm going to use TikTok because I want the younger crowd. Like, when you think about LinkedIn, who's out there?
Well, when I look at people with LinkedIn profiles, it's almost everyone. And it is a platform that people don't use as often to post everything. So you're not weeding through an entire if you go to my Facebook inbox right now, I have hundreds of unread messages. If you go to my LinkedIn, completely clear, because I get less people who send me messages there. So that's why I use LinkedIn. If someone has a LinkedIn profile, it's a good place to be targeting them, whether it's for a professional reason or not. I have real estate agents that have used the service, like have used LinkedIn for their marketing, because again, less fluff for people to go to, to go through, because they're still scrolling and now suddenly a house pops up that they're more interested in because they're not seeing 15 other ones in their feed too.
Yeah, that's good advice, Jenae. So your own personal journey, we were talking, and I mentioned this earlier in here, about this idea of hitting this point where you realize it's not overwhelm anymore, but it's excitement. And can you give us a little bit of like sharing what you want to out of this, but like what's led to this pinnacle of realizing that it's part of it, but it doesn't have to be overwhelmed?
Yeah. So I'm going to illustrate it with a quick story. And
Okay.
basically I'm going to tell you about my February. In February of this year, I launched my business for the first time. So I went from making $0 to, with my first course. Can I talk money on your podcast?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. All right.
Please do.
Okay. So I went from making $0 to $10,000, which for me, that may not mean much to a lot of people. For me, it meant everything.
Absolutely. First month, like jumping into business for the first time. Absolutely.
And I was rewriting these stories in my head about how I couldn't do this, how I couldn't show up for myself. People weren't going to invest in me. And I made a good chunk of money. So then I launched my business in February. I had been working part-time for the organization that I work at during the day, and they offered me a promotion to go back full-time. And I dramatically increased my income there. And then my dad died, which was terrible. Also from a time-consuming perspective, emotionally taxing perspective, was really doing things on the other end of the excitement that was happening on this side. And then I met a man who we are now dating, and I am so thrilled that he is my partner. And so I had all of these major things that were happening in 1 month in my life. And I could have completely spun out, this is what previous me would have done. Was I probably would
I
have
love that previous me. Yeah.
I probably would have watched everything on Netflix because that was a way that I numbed. The other way that I numbed was in drinking a lot of alcohol. And so I would have gone that route as well. And in this case, for whatever reason, not for whatever reason, I know exactly the reason, there was a cause for it. I had been working on myself and I had better ways to think through this. And I was able to just focus on the things that I could control, realizing the things that I could not necessarily, but I can always control my actions and attitude around them. And then I just kept moving forward. It ended up being one of the most beautiful, like, my stance on life is that, like, what makes life beautiful is that you get to experience the dichotomy of the good and the bad. Like, you can't truly appreciate the good without some of the other junk too. And in that month, I really got to experience the breadth of every possible emotion that I have had in my entire life. And I'm so thankful for that. But to someone else looking in on what my life probably looked like, they probably were like, I don't know how she's doing any of this. And honestly, I don't know how I was either, but I'm thankful that I did it. And I'm thankful that, like, my attitude around it was good. And then stepping forward into kind of how things have progressed from there, I'm just continuing that thought process. I can choose to either be overwhelmed and stressed out, or I can choose to be excited and figuring out what the possibilities look like. Now I'm just looking at everything like this is an opportunity for me to learn something, or to, like, I don't know. Before we were recording, I was talking about how I wanted to be spending more quality time with my partner's family, and how normally that quality time I would have been filling it with work. And instead, like, figuring out how those puzzle pieces fit together, because they do. I just never thought that they did before. And it turns out that they do.
Yeah. Cause I go back to something I preach a lot of, is that it's just brain science. Like, I think self-sabotage is bullshit. And you're going to hear this numerous times on numerous podcasts, because I want to change the face of coaching in this industry, because it's shrouded with guilt and shame. And it's about realizing, okay, hey, I'm choosing this and I want to do this. And yeah, there's going to be bumps in the road around it, but understanding and being able to uncover some of those things, and knowing and being able to give yourself some grace. I mean, I remember, Jenae, when your father passed away, and that is tough stuff. And sometimes we fill it with work, and, hence some of the weekend filling it with work, because it fills the space, and we don't have to feel the feelings right away. And then realizing that when it hits you, and it's okay to feel those things. And then making that choice that on the weekends, I always say, as entrepreneurs, I work every day, but some days it's 5 minutes because I'm responding to something, and other days it's 4 hours, and other days it's 8 hours. And, and I get to go ski or do these things that I want to do. And that's what I'm hearing you say, is that, you choose then the time that you want to spend, and look at and say, okay, what is this? Going back to and looping back to the brain science, is that it's just brain science, these messages that come into our head about what we should and shouldn't do, or it's a belief that somewhere has happened because of messages that we've gotten from people. And I hear you saying it's just choice.
It is. And it's recognizing, without judging yourself, some of the things that you held as truths that maybe haven't been true. Like, one of my core fundamental beliefs used to be that my worth was based on my productivity and what I was able to do for other people. And that's no longer a belief that I'm saying is true anymore.
Yay. Yeah. And I'm wondering, I wish I could see hands raised, right? How many people that are listening to this have felt that in the past? Yeah. And this achievement orientation that is promoted in our culture.
Yeah.
And that we are what we do. And that's so not what it's about.
Yeah. Well, and for me, Debbie, like, I've always been kind of naturally good at stuff. Like, I was naturally pretty smart. I was naturally kind of popular. Like, I had some of those natural things happening. And so then perfectionism sneaks in, where it's like if it's something, then for a while in my life, no longer, but for a while in my life, I was then scared to try new things because I wasn't going to be good at it.
Yeah.
And so then I just only get perfect at a small thing versus the excitement and joy of trying something new and learning to love the process of learning.
Yeah. Yeah, Jenae, that reminds me of a conversation I was having with my son. And there's a podcast that I did actually about your comfort zone and your safety zone, and pushing the edge of your comfort zone lowers and lessens the safety zone for yourself, and how the risk aversion, like if you know, because fortunately I've had the same situation and my son the same thing. And we were talking about how we step into things knowing that we're going to be successful at it.
Mm-hmm.
Stepping into the risks, i.e. starting your own business, me, same thing, stepping out of a C-suite job into my own business. Those things are risks.
Mm-hmm.
And that has a different risk tolerance to it than stepping into something you know you're going to be successful at. And so what I'm hearing you say to people is step in, right?
Yeah.
Like jump into it, because you never know.
Yeah. Step in and then also tell people about it.
Yeah. Oh, visibility.
Right. Yeah. Step into it, and then but don't share all the goodness for your, don't keep it all for yourself. Like you can share it with other people, because you just in sharing a little bit of your piece of life out loud with other people gives people a freedom that they can do the same thing if they want to. And you don't ever have to teach them anything. Like,
yeah, that's good.
You just doing it is you teaching.
Yeah, that's so good, Jenae. So Jenae, I have a couple of kind of final questions as we wrap into this. One, if you could give one piece of advice to anyone listening or watching, what would that advice be? I know I kind of put you on the spot, sorry.
That you are not your biggest mistakes.
Yeah, circling back to the very beginning. Yeah, that's good. That's good. And most of us probably can look back and think of some regrets or mistakes that, yeah, we just need to let go of.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And then Jenae, if someone's interested in learning a little bit more about how they can become more visible, more about your experience in LinkedIn, all that you have to offer in the world, where would you send them? And I'll also include this in the show notes.
Absolutely. I would go to JenaeLyn.com. That's JenaeLyn.com. That's my first and my last name. So also look me up on LinkedIn and we can be connected on there.
Fantastic. Jenae, thank you again so much for the time and sharing some great hints and also sharing with us your journey and what that's looked like. I so appreciate it. And with that, folks, that's a wrap. If you would like to find out more about how you can work with me or want just more information about how you can lead your lit up life, please go out to my website, www.leadyourlituplife, and sign up for a clarity call. I'd love to be able to chat with you for 30 minutes and help you get really crystal clear on something that you want in your life. With that, folks, have a fantastic week and we'll see you next week.
See the colors of the rainbow. Find your own kind of happy. See the colors of